Okay, good evening all. Welcome back and welcome if this is your first time here. My name's Clare and this is our second week of October. So I thought we'll continue on talking about the mind, and then I might get into a bit of talking about attachment and anger and all the juicy stuff that we come to sort of work with our mind. I'll start by saying the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. Refuge is like turning your mind, imprinting into your mind where you want to, your goals, or what you aim towards, which is Buddhahood. And so the Buddha guided us with all of his teachings on how to do what he did and free the mind and fill it with all love and compassion and become enlightened. And so just for inspiration and to imprint onto the mind, we think of positive things. I mean, some Christians may, think of Jesus, or Muslims think of Muhammad, and that inspires people. So we turn our mind towards the Buddha. And then with bodhicitta, it's the bodhicitta means bodhi mind, means the enlightened mind. And enlightenment is the wish to become free oneself, to become enlightened oneself, in order that you can then benefit others. And it's this understanding of that we're all in the same boat, and that all other beings are suffering the way we are. That yes, we wish to free ourselves, but we're just one person amongst the billions and billions of sentient beings. So that it would seem a bit rude just to think of yourself, to enlighten yourself and leave everyone else behind. So the idea is that once we clear our own minds, once we start to feel better and happier, then we become more aware of other people's suffering, because we know what suffering feels like and we can see the suffering of others. And so that becomes unbearable, that there's so much suffering, and there is so much suffering. It's not hard, don't have to look far. But that you can actually free yourself from the suffering, so that you want to actually be able to help all other beings to have the same understanding and to free themselves. So that's the enlightened mind. It's actually the wish to be free in order to be able to benefit all other sentient beings. So that's bodhicitta. So that in this little prayer, that's what we're doing. We're looking to the Buddha for inspiration and trying to develop the wish to develop this mind. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the highest assembly. From the virtuous merit that I collect by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the highest assembly. From the virtuous merit that I collect by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the highest assembly. From the virtuous merit that I collect by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. The Dharma is the teachings, the actual information and guide on how to develop your own mind. And the Sangha are the people that have, generally it's the people that have had realisations, we refer to people in robes as Sangha, and our teachers, and you can sort of distinguish, because not all people in robes are necessarily have the realisations, but the Sangha that have actually sort of experienced a lot of this and understand how to teach it are the Sangha in the prayer. So I mean, it can be both, but there is a slight distinction between them. So Geshe Doga is our teacher. So the Buddha is like the doctor. He prescribed, this is what I did, this is how it's done, and the Dharma is the medicine, and the Sangha are like the nurses who deliver the medicine. And so the key is the Dharma. It's the most important thing. So we give a lot of respect to written material. So if you ever have any books or any written material handed to you, you wouldn't put it on the floor, and you don't put it on beds or chairs, just out of respect. And it's a mind thing as well, of actually showing respect to this information that is your ticket out. Really, it's really, really important, so that we show a lot of respect to it. On that note, just other little things of etiquette is you would never point your feet towards the Buddhas. And it's good to know, because sometimes, people come in, they don't know. I did it myself in Thailand, got into trouble. I was very tired, and I sat down in this beautiful temple with my feet sort of leaning back, and someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, they were quite cross with me, and I was, I was a little bit disrespectful, I think. So that's my bad karma. But it's you carry dirt on your feet, so it's another way of actually sort of developing respect for the Buddhas and the teachers. And I mean, if it's not your thing, it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't matter if people come in and sit down and put their feet forward. It really doesn't, if they don't know that it's a problem. And eventually, someone will tell you. What else do we do? Yeah, the books wouldn't go on the floor. You don't either grab a cushion or a table if you're ever using any of the books. That's all. Okay, we'll move into a bit of meditation. And last week we were talking about the mind and looking at the clarity of the mind. Yes, that it's like, and in the meditations they often refer to the mind as like a clear sky. And in that meditation we did last week, you visualise the sky and you bring it down into yourself, and you just visualise this clear space. And that's a metaphor for the mind as this clear space that everything just passes through. Your thoughts are this constant stream passing through this clear space. And with the meditation, what we're trying to do is still the thoughts and just sit with the clear space. And that's your natural state of mind. And everything else is kind of a disturbance within the mind. So meditation takes you to a more still place that it's not nothing. It's a way of actually developing clarity about everything else. And it's a circuit breaker. It actually energises you, because it's exhausting thinking all the time. This constant chatter that's going on in our heads, and thinking about the past and thinking about the future, and worrying about this and worrying about that, and I'm no good, or I did something wrong, or this constant sort of, or I want this, or what am I doing next week, or geez, I need a holiday, and just endless train of thoughts. And if we're stressed, it becomes obsessive. We can, and it's exhausting. So with meditation, we're trying to just still that, and in a very real way, by getting in touch with this clarity of the mind or understanding the mind, you begin to be able to let go and not hold on to these thoughts. You can let them go. Good thoughts, bad thoughts. You could be really happy and excited about things, but that's still disturbing this stillness of your mind. So they actually say in the scriptures, good, bad, it's no different. Whatever's going on, it's no different. It's just a disturbance in your mind. So that if we can learn to kind of really understand this and control our minds a bit more, whether good or bad happens, it doesn't really matter. And the other part of it is understanding that every experience that we have has come from somewhere, has come from some causes and conditions. There were a chain of events that caused you to be here, right here in this minute. And thinking what you're thinking now has come from the thoughts that you were having before. And the thoughts that came before that, and the thoughts that came before that, ad infinitum, influences what's going to happen down the track. Which means that everything that we're experiencing now had a cause. So that when we understand the impermanence and that there are causes, we can actually start to take more control over what's happening in our mind as well for the future. They say that if you want to know what happened in your past, you look at your present. Circumstances are the result of past actions, and they could be past actions from previous lives or whatever. But we know that so that anything good, if you want good in the future, then you need to create good results, good causes, for good results. So Buddhism would also say, and we're going to look at that a bit later too, that the mere fact that we're human, and plus the fact that you're listening to some Dharma, some Buddhism, is extraordinarily good karma. Whether we don't kind of really know that, but it's rare. If you think of the number of people in the world, it's rare, or think of the number of people in Melbourne, it's rare for people to be listening to the Dharma, and to learn to understand their own minds and take control in this way. So, they would say that that's what they refer to as a perfect human rebirth. So we're going to look at that a bit more closely later too. So we may think, my life's crap and everything's going wrong, but still the fact that we're human is a result of, I think it's a result of generosity. It's a result of very good karma just to be born human. Because you could be born an animal or an insect that doesn't have the capacity to think, and can't think their way out of it, and can't do anything about it, and can't make choices. They just sort of go with instinct and survival. So, that's kind of a good way to counter some of our negative feelings that we have. Not saying that everybody has negative feelings, but I know that whenever anything goes wrong, I'm a sook, and I want to know why. Right, so we'll look at, it's called the Meditation on the Continuity of Mind. So, we talked about how the mind is all this surface stuff going on, like on the top of the ocean, say on a windy day, and you look at all the little peaks out in the ocean, the white caps and the disturbance, but underneath, deep down, the ocean is quite calm down in the depths. And that's an analogy for the mind. But also, they say more so, it's more like a river, it's just continuous flow of the mind, whether good, bad or indifferent, it's continually flowing. Yeah, so it's the theory is, and when you look at it like this, it becomes a bit clearer that the mind is sort of beginningless. it's not like the body. The body came from your parents, from physical matter, and will grow old and disintegrate. And but the mind isn't physical form. It's not material, and it continues. And some scientists who study this say that the mind is the brain. And yes, you can analyse the brain and you can see the brain's activity. You could see which part of the brain is thinking or working or angry or whatever, but they can't tell you what that brain is thinking. They can't tell you actually what they're thinking. They can tell you it is thinking in this part or that part, but they can't tell you what it's actually thinking, because that's in the mind and it's separate from the physical electronic stuff that's going on in the synapses. Also, your mind doesn't come from your parents, otherwise you'd have all their thoughts and experiences. So a lot of your habits and genetic stuff will show up, and some very uncanny things happen that we're very much like our parents. But that's a lot of socialisation, and also genetic, which is physical, but your mental activity is completely separate from their physical form that they gave you. Okay, so that's just a few thoughts before we start. So we'll just do a bit of breathing meditation and then follow in to this. So we sit with the back straight, relax the shoulders, and you need to be relaxed. Don't tense up trying to sit up too straight, and the left hand down and the right hand on top with the thumbs just touching and slightly pointing inwards towards the navel. And that's a kind of energy flow thing. The head tilted slightly forward, not too far forward, not too far back. The tongue at the top of the palate behind the teeth. The eyes almost closed, just letting in a bit of light staring downwards, or closed if you get too distracted. But generally, if your eyes are fully closed, it sort of makes you sleepy. The legs crossed if you can, but just comfortable. And if you're in a chair, just maybe with your feet flat on the floor and tilt the hips forward and just to straighten the spine. And just bring the mind inward and focus on the coming and going of the breath. You can do this as a mental activity, just following the breath in and out. And counting helps to focus. If you lose count, then just come back to one. And one full round is one, like breathing in and breathing out is one. So we'll just do this for a couple of minutes. Letting go of any thoughts, just let them pass. Just keeping the object of the meditation is the breath. So just keeping your focus on the breath and bringing your mind back. And just being aware when your mind has drifted, just come back to the breath. So I'll talk you through this meditation now. So first, take a look at your present state of mind, at the thoughts and sensations flashing by. Just observe them in a detached way, without clinging or rejecting any of them. Now start to travel backward through time. Briefly skim over the conscious experiences you have had since waking up this morning. Are these part of the same stream of consciousness as your present experiences? Before waking up, you were probably dreaming. Try to recall last night's dreams. Do they also belong to this same mind stream? Continue to trace your mental experiences to yesterday. Two days ago. Last week. Last month. Now think about last year, the experiences you had. Two years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Take yourself back through time, trying to remember. Continue to check if these experiences are of the same stream of consciousness. Avoid getting involved in any of your recollections. The purpose of the meditation is not to relive good times or sort out problems from the past, but to get a feeling for the mind's continuity. If you should find something in your memory that you would like to investigate further, put it aside until later. Go back into your life as far as you can, bringing to mind experiences from your adolescence and childhood. People are sometimes able to remember their infancy or even the time of birth. Relax and allow your mind to allow such memories to arise. If you have difficulty accessing memories from the early part of your life, don't worry. Realise that just as your present mind stream is the continuation of experiences that you can remember, those experiences in turn are the continuation of earlier ones that you can no longer remember. But you know that you were 4 years old, or 3 years old, 2 years old, 1 and a baby. Now think of your birth, the time that you were in the womb, and the moment of your conception. If your mind is a stream of experiences, each one arising from the one before it, then did it exist throughout these experiences, or did it begin to exist at some point? Consider the different possibilities. Did it arise from your parents' minds? If so, when and how? Or did it arise out of nowhere, without any causes and conditions? Or did it arise from a mind stream that already existed before you were conceived, in another life? See if you can open your mind to that possibility. Having reached your mind back into your memory as far as you can, now gently bring your awareness into the present and again observe the thoughts and feelings that arise. Simply experience your stream of consciousness as it continues to flow. Feel its momentum, one thought or feeling leading to the next, that leads to the next, which leads to the next, on and on. Finally, try to get some idea of where it goes from here. Contemplate your mind stream flowing through the rest of the day, and then tomorrow, the coming days, weeks, and years, up until death. What happens then? Consider the different possibilities. Does the stream of consciousness suddenly cease to exist? Does it transform into something else? Does it continue on, encountering new experiences? Consider these possibilities carefully, using the reasons given earlier. Although you might not come to any definite conclusion, the important thing is to look with a clear and open mind. Okay, just gently bring your mind back to the room. So any questions or thoughts? So I remember the first time I did that meditation, it kind of blew my mind a bit. I don't know if it's, I found, I've never been talked through it again, but so I've never really sort of gone back to it. But I do remember it was very helpful, because for me the idea of reincarnation was, Westerners don't believe in it, don't think about it, don't talk about it. So you'll find a lot of, like the Tibetans or Eastern cultures that talk about reincarnation, it's very ordinary and very normal to them. And I grew up Catholic and was very comfortable with the notion of heaven and hell. But if I do this sort of meditation looking for heaven, it's a bit less scientific to find it, or a place that is existing as hell. So it's sort of not much different to that. So you're thinking that your culture that brings you up with is what you're comfortable with, but we're not very comfortable with the notion of reincarnation. But I think this is one nice way to kind of look at it, to think of the mind stream travelling on. And I know that there are meditations on death. There's a lot of information about the dying process in Tibetan Buddhism, so that there are much more detailed explanations of what happens to the mind, or what you can do with the mind at that time, which is really interesting and kind of positive, just to think. No, I think the positive thing is that if you think about the mind and our states of mind, if the mind is going to travel on and take another rebirth, then you really want to have a positive state of mind as you're passing away, as you're checking out. You want positive thoughts because you want the next thought to be positive. So there's a logic to it. So if you have some notion of reincarnation, then absolutely you don't want to die with an angry mind, for sure. But even without the notion of reincarnation, I think if you've had any experience of people dying, people can die very peacefully if they've kind of resolved whatever, and can it's different for everyone, but I think if you had a peaceful, positive state of mind, it would make your final moments much easier anyway, whether you believe in reincarnation or not. So there is a lot of focus on these practices so that you can have a pretty decent death, which we're all... I don't want to sound all morbid and stuff, but to me I find it comforting, especially as I get older. And, it's real. So we will talk about some of the negative states of mind and how to deal with them for a little bit. Now, I have this book, which is it's called The Path to Enlightenment in Tibetan Buddhism, Geshe Acharya Thubten Lodin. Now, Geshe Lodin lived in Melbourne. He wrote a lot of books for his students. He's written a lot of books, and he passed away, and his students have been keeping his centre open. It's the Tibetan Buddhist Society over in Uroke, and they have just last year found his reincarnation of an 8-year-old little 8-year-old boy. So he will eventually, he's going to study in the monastery and then come back and live in Melbourne, and the centre will be his again, but we'll see how that plays out. Sometimes it works, sometimes the reincarnations choose differently. But they've all gone over and met him in India, and they say that he looks really happy and he's doing really well. And so in the Tibetan culture, it's very normal. So for us, it's pretty wild. But anyway, I only met him. I went to one of his teachings years ago before he passed away. But he's written these amazing books, and he left all of this as a guide for his students. So they've been running his centre using his books as their guides. They stick very closely to his teachings. And that's the other thing about Buddhism, or probably any religion or whatever, to do it properly. And when this centre started, it was started by some people back in the 1970s who met the lamas in Nepal and said to them, look, we love this stuff, can we take it back to our countries? And there were people from America, Germany, France and New Zealand and Australia. And they said, eventually Lama Zopa and Lama Yeshe, that's up there, that's Lama Osel, the reincarnation of Lama Yeshe. I don't want to get too weird and complicated for you, but the lamas back in the 1970s, I think, early 80s, they said to them, yes, you can start this, but you have to do exactly what we say. Do it. We will give you all the guidelines and you do it properly. And those lamas have travelled here and stuff like that. So everything we do has come from Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. And the teachings are very prescriptive because it is the path. And if you do it wrong, like there are a lot, you've got to be very careful about who your teachers are too. That's in the scriptures. They say very careful about who teaches you this stuff, who you go to for your information, because if they've set up their own version of it, it's not going to work. And you're going to probably get into some dangerous territory mentally by doing this wrong. You have to be guided through it. So you have to be very careful because you're messing with your mind. So you do have to be very careful. Now, these books, he is a great writer, and there's a book that we studied here for years. It's the Lam Rim, The Path to Enlightenment. That's what Lam Rim means. We did Pabonka Rinpoche's Lam Rim for probably 10 years. We studied a book very similar to this with Geshe Doga. And then I picked this up, and his writing is very simple. A lot of the writing is very, a lot of information, and he's kind of simplified it and made it a pretty good read. So the Lam Rim is the path. You start at the beginning. This isn't a book that you sit down and just read. It's something that you contemplate bits and pieces over time. And you can more or less open it anywhere and learn about something. But it guides you through just, the early stages of your practice and then through to the more complicated stuff. So I thought I'd just read these couple of pages. I've got a lot more information, but I thought I'd just read some of this to give you an idea. So we talk about delusions, and they're the disturbing states of mind. So you've got the delusions of attachment, anger and ignorance. Attachment is... I'll just read. He said, desirous attachment is a mental factor that perceives external or internal objects as attractive. It exaggerates their attractiveness and wishes to possess and retain them. So when he says it exaggerates, it's what we do. We create a story in our minds about whatever, and they've done scientific studies saying that 95% of what we perceive is a projection from our own mind, and that's just separate scientific, that's not Buddhism, and it's what Buddhism has always said that we're doing, so that whatever we see, we immediately start to create a story and create a picture in our own mind. And attachment, I'll go on. With desirous attachment, it is very difficult to separate the mind from its object. Desirous attachment is like the mental glue and clings to the object of desire Other delusions stain the mind, other delusions such as anger or jealousy or pride, stain the mind as dirt stains a white cloth, whereas attachment is like an oil stain soaked into the cloth. It's relatively easy to remove ordinary dirt through washing, but oil absorbs so thoroughly into cloth it is very difficult to clean away. Because attachment clings to the object of desire so strongly and holds on to retain it, it is as though the mind of desirous attachment absorbs into the object, like separating oil from cloth. It is very difficult to separate attachment from its object. Desirous attachment encompasses desire, attachment, clinging, possessiveness, grasping, passion, and so on. It is generated towards any of the objects of the six senses. So the six senses is the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, touch. So all of these, it could be, desiring a person, desiring food, desiring, music. We get very attached to music. And touch, maybe you want silk sheets or something, I don't know. But just we like nice things and we get very, very attached to it. And, money can buy you nice things and people sort of get super attached to all sorts of stuff and people and places. So it's generated towards any of the objects of the six senses. Desirous attachment is therefore experienced continuously because you're always in contact with an object of desirous attachment. In the case of anger and the other delusions, you're not constantly in contact with the objects of these delusions, and so their effect is not so pervasively dangerous as with desirous attachment. It is the attachment that clings to the self and phenomena as inherently existence that is the base of all delusions and the root cause of cyclic existence. So that means that clings to the self of phenomena and inherently existent, and that's the base of all our delusions and the root cause of psychic existence. So clinging to the self and phenomena. So we think of ourselves like we've just done a meditation on the continuous flow of the mind. So which part of the mind is you? In that meditation, which part of that was you? Was that the crazy misspent youth? Was it the, getting married and having children, settling down? Was it the having trouble at work and getting very angry at your colleagues? Was it which part of that story that you've just been through is you? And you know that your mind changes constantly and that you've been through all sorts of ups and downs. And you've been really kind and you've been really angry and not so kind. Which part of that is you? So you can't find it when you actually search for it. And you know that physically you're changing. So that the body that you had 20 years ago, I think they say every cell changes every 7 years. So which part of that is you? Is the you that you can say, this is me. Logically, we know we can't find it. And then there are meditations where you actually look at this very closely. You analyse down to try and find the self, and you can't. And it's the same with phenomena, with all phenomena. You can't actually find an inherently existing object. There's causes and conditions and parts that are constantly in flux, but you can't. Is the paint the table? Is the wood the table? Is the nails the table? I think Damien made these, or someone else, I'm not sure, but Damien was part of this as well. He was necessary for the construction of this table. So if you say all of the parts of the table, so if I take away the shelf, is that no longer a table? If I take away part of it, is it still a table? Or if I put cushions on it and sit on it and say it's a seat, is it a table? You know, at what point is it the inherently existing table? So these are thoughts and meditations that should be in your mind all the time, asking yourself which part of a situation is the inherently existing situation. Because there were causes and there were conditions and there were people and things involved, and it's moving all the time. Which part of it is the inherently existing thing? As Lama Yeshe says, am I communicating? Does this make sense? That when you look for things, you can't actually find the solid, inherently existing thing. And it's because we cling to things as inherently existing that causes us the problem. So we're going to run out of time here, and I'm only going to be able to talk about attachment. We can talk about anger next week. I thought yeah. And that's the problem with attachment, is that we cling to this, to things and people and places and stuff as if it's the most important thing on the earth, and that my happiness is completely involved with that. And if I don't get, you know, I'd like a new car. If I was really obsessive, I would be really, you know. I knew someone that, I worked with a guy, he bought a car, it was too expensive, but he liked it. And he went to the boss and demanded a raise so that he could afford to pay for his car. And the boss said no. Like, that shows his ability to think clearly, that he thought, you know, I'll just go and demand a raise so that I can have more money, so that I can have the car. So he was hugely in debt for this car, and it was causing him a lot of stress because he was so far in debt to the point that he went and demanded a raise to get more money that was not forthcoming. And I said to him, sell the car, just get rid of it. And he goes, no, but I like it. Makes me feel good. And I think it was his ego. He liked driving it and being seen with his cool car. So, you know, he caused himself so much angst about attachment to a bunch of metal and rubber tyres. You know. And so this is what we do. And I shouldn't be laughing at him because I think it's what we all do to some degree. We invest so much in the things that we think are going to make us happy. Oh, if I just have this, I'll be happy. Or if this just works out, I'll be happy. It's all external. It's all out there. And we've created a story around all of it. We know it's 95% projection because they've done scientific testing. That's what we're doing. And when it doesn't work out according to our projection, we're very unhappy. You know, and we know this, I'll go there, with relationships, that people, we invest so much in people and we have expectations from that investment. And when that doesn't play out the way we want it, we're dissatisfied or unhappy or angry and let down or abandoned, and, you know, it causes us so much trouble because it's not fitting with our projection, with the story that we've created that we want for that thing. And it will always happen. And even when we're aware of this, being aware of it, I think, makes it easier. And also being aware of it can help you enjoy things more because you're not clinging as much. You can just enjoy. And, you know, and there are those amazing people that when they split up, they still care about each other and they want the happiness for the other person. That's love. That's not attachment. What I do, or what most of us do, is attachment. It's what they can do for me. It's when that person makes me happy, I love them. And when they don't make me happy, I don't love them anymore. That's not love, that's attachment. And now love is, you know, even when you do care about the other person and you want good things for the other person, it's still mixed with attachment about what we're getting out of it as well. So attachment's a big thing because then it's from attachment that we generate anger. Because, you know, when it doesn't work out, we get very angry. Or it's because we're attached to, we want things done a certain way and the boss is thwarting, you know, the boss is a psycho who's making trouble at work or whatever, and things aren't getting done properly and you go home angry. And it's because you had attachment to, you wanted certain things, even though, yes, he's crazy. So it gets complicated. But it's when you get what you don't want, you get angry. When things sort of come to you that you didn't want to happen, you get angry. And when you get what you want and it doesn't work out, you get angry. So it all stems back to attachment. And I'll have a quick read through this, just some of the ways to deal with attachment. Contemplate the faults of attachment. Examine carefully the mind that experiences it. Is it excited and full of unrealistic expectation? It glosses over the facts and deals with projected fantasies. It cannot see things clearly and is unstable to make intelligent judgments. Is this happiness? Also, the consequences of attachment are not peace and satisfaction, but disappointment and desire for more of the same. Think of the suffering you experience when you separate from an object of attachment. We all know the pain of relationships that did not work and the grief over a loved one's death. So recognise that attachment is not a peaceful, clear state of mind and that it leads to dissatisfaction and unhappiness. And making a habit of it leaves on our mind stream imprints to experience more problems in the future. Attachment clouds the mind and prevents us from recognising its faults. So we think attachment is good because we are after things that want us to make us happy. We sort of think, well, what's wrong with that? But it's clouding, it's fooling us, that we grasp onto things and we don't look at the faults. We don't consider the downside, we just want it because we think it's going to make us happy. And again, it's grasping at stuff out there. You know, what we need to do to make us happy is work in here. And then whatever happens, you can have things or not have things. It's not going to matter because you have strength of mind. Recall that all things are impermanent. By their nature, they change from moment to moment and will inevitably perish. Meditate on death. Remember the inevitability of death and that it could come at any time. Imagine how you will feel about separating forever from your objects of attachment. Walt Disney, I don't know, many people know this, I don't know, he put himself into cryogenics because he wanted to come back as Walt Disney. He was a multi-millionaire with, you know, lots of stuff and fame, and he couldn't handle the thought of dying. I don't know if they cut his head off. Do they cut your head off to put you in cryogenics? So, you know, that's how attached people are. They can't handle letting go of anything. So all your objects of attachment, loved ones, enjoyments, possessions, not only that are they unable to help you as you die, but your attachment to them will upset your mind and hinder a peaceful death. The best remedy to attachment and all other delusions is to think about emptiness. So we've talked a bit about that, the lack of inherent existence, the emptiness of everything. Investigate the I that experiences the attachment. What is its nature? Try to locate this seemingly real, solid I in your body or mind. Examine also the object of attachment. Is this personal thing inherently wonderful and pleasing? If so, why doesn't everyone appreciate it? Can you see how your mind exaggerates and gets excited about the object? Yeah, that's the other thing, like something that, like the car that guy liked, I didn't think it was a particularly nice car. So, you know, was it or wasn't it? It was coming from his mind that it was a great car, and it was coming from my mind that it wasn't a great car. So what was it? You know? Try to see that both the I and its object are empty of inherent existence. They do not exist in the way they appear in and of themselves. This might sound pretty unconvincing, especially when attachment is strong, but consider it carefully. Just thinking about emptiness is useful and helps us to gradually understand what it means and to loosen the grasp on our attachment. And the other one is to look at the kind of, you know, if it's strong, desirous attachment for a person, and you're kind of going crazy with it, it's disturbing and upsetting. They say to think about that person's body at death time. You know, is that attractive? And to think of your own body, or to think of the body when you cut the skin, what's underneath, and that we're filled with pus and urine and faeces and gross things. You know, I'm not sure that that's entirely convincing either, but it's kind of good to kind of think about, you know, we're pretty gross, really. You know, they talk about body beautiful and stuff like that, and go to the gym and stuff like that, but it's just trying to cover up what's really going on. A remedy for attachment to food is to contemplate the suffering experienced by all the beings involved in its preparation. Animals are killed to provide us with meat and fish. Innumerable small animals and insects are killed in the cultivation, fertilisation and spraying of grains, fruit and vegetables that we eat. Recall the hard work of the farmers, fishermen, fruit pickers, factory workers, truck drivers, shop assistants and cooks. Try to eat mindfully, with appreciation for all those beings, kindness and sacrifice. And that's another sort of form of thinking about emptiness, is where your food came from. And also, you know, the teachers talk about eating, you know, His Holiness recommends vegetarianism, and he's saying, you know, that's good if you can do it, because it's you're thinking about not killing of large animals. But the other thing is that there are millions of critters are killed in creating vegetables as well, so you can't avoid killing to get your food. And most of the Tibetans eat meat because of the climate that they came from, I think, especially they needed the meat for the energy, because you can't grow a lot of vegetables up in the Himalayas. But to think about all of the people involved and the processes and everything that was involved to bring your food to you, to eat mindfully like that is a really good thing to do, and to be thankful, to actually offer thanks. There is a form of, we do the tea offering here, we offer food and drink. So you can just in your mind just be thankful to all of the people and critters and for the food that's sustaining you. And it's a good way to think about emptiness, because it's, if you think about the food, it's not inherently existing either. It came together with all of these different processes. It's like a bowl of muesli, all the different things in it came from so many different places. And we call it muesli. But if you take the sultanas out, is it still muesli? Which part of the muesli is the muesli? You know? So you do that all the time, and it helps you kind of lessen your attachment to things. So we've just gone a bit over. We can leave it there for tonight, and we'll go into anger and talk more about the perfect human rebirth, I think, next week. So thank you all. There's tea and cake in the... Oh, actually, if there's any questions, sorry, talking. Yes?
I was going to ask, you said before that particular meditation blew your mind the first time you heard it, or the first time you did it. Is there a particular name for that meditation?
Yes, it's the continuity of the mind. And you might be able to, you can possibly Google it, but this book, How to Meditate by Kathleen MacDonald, it's in there. And this is a cracker, this book. It is actually a mini lamrim. It follows the same steps as this. It's got all these little meditations. It's got a little blurb, little talk, and then a meditation. But yeah, the continuity of the mind. It's cool, yeah. Okay, thank you all.